Hello, everybody, and welcome to the March phone calls for Charlie Adelson's jail phone call logs. And before I get into Charlie's ghosted calls for the month of March, I want to tell you guys I have some great news. I do have the call durations, and I'm probably going to do a longer, in-depth video about the call durations. I want to thank my mother for getting these numbers. She said it was like counting flies on fly paper. So she says she enjoyed it so much, and we have a big shout out to my mom. Thank you for getting these durations. The most durations in the month of March was Charlie's lawyers for 37 hours and 57 minutes. And then we have Donna with 33 hours and 30 minutes. Then we have the burner phone with 6 hours and 2 minutes. And then we have finance with 1 hour and 58 minutes. All right, then we have Harvey with 1 hour and 35 minutes. And then we have Janice with 50 minutes. All right, so I hope that that sheds some light. I'll go more in depth with those, but I just want to get back to the March ghosted calls. I hope this sheds a little bit more light. To answer a few of your questions, I believe that Charlie only can make 30-minute calls at one time after it cuts off his phone call. I believe that he can call from around 9 a.m. till about 10 p.m. at the latest, I think, are the general times that I see on his call logs. All right, I hope that helps you guys out. Let's get back to these March ghosted calls. Let's just jump into Charlie's phone calls for the month of March, and he has not been that lucky. Not a lot of people answering his phone calls. He's getting ghosted by his mother, his lawyer, his baby mama, his financial phone calls. So my mom noticed a lot of things, and I'm going to read to you what she noticed and show you what I noticed. Also, one thing I've noticed is that Charlie's calls to Donna and the lawyers have decreased significantly since December to Donna and his lawyers. And you can see it went down, I think, about 16 percentage points since December and January months, where we were seeing Donna have about 46% and the lawyers were having somewhere in the 30 percentages. And those calls were being answered a little bit more frequently. And I think that as people see the truth about Charlie, they're just getting tired of answering the phone. There's not as much going on in the case. Charlie's making more calls to just random people, financial people who may be interested in making a buck from someone from jail, but they're not answering the phone either. So I just find this very interesting that the calls to Donna have decreased. And just as a side note, I wanted to note that I hear you guys loud and clear that you guys really enjoy this call durations of Charlie's Valentine's calls and the holiday calls, and I found those very interesting too. I also found it very interesting that Charlie's mom went 18 times with unanswered phone calls, even though her durations and the lawyer's durations are significantly longer than anyone else's. I wanted to just let you guys know that for sure. The lawyers and Donna are numero uno in call duration. I'm also interested in Charlie's jail records too, incident reports. So I'm working on those as we speak, and I will be putting in requests for more. Thank you. Hello, everybody. I want to go over percentages of the people that ghosted Charlie. I find these numbers pretty significant. So let's get right to his March calls to Donna. 26% of the calls were not picked up. 74% of the time she did pick up the phone, but there was a decrease of phone calls to Donna, negative 19%. All right, then the next thing I'm going to go over is how often he called his lawyers. And 40% of the law office phone calls were not picked up. And 60% were picked up, but 40% of the time they were not picking up the phone. All right, then the burner phone, and just as a side note, the burner phone, I think, changed its phone number again. According to my mom, she noticed it has the same area code from the North Carolina region. 64% of the burner phone calls were not picked up, and 36% were picked up. So only picking up the phone about 36% of the time of the total phone calls. And we kind of allege that that might be Charlie's baby mama and maybe talking to his son. Then the other category of other, in this other category, you know, she put some of his relatives, some of whom we've kind of heard their names or recognized regions of the United States, such as Texas, that some of the relatives live in, and phone calls to those regions. And we speculate that people might still pick up the phone for Charlie, but 77% of the time, these other phone calls are not picking up. They're only picking up 23% of the time. So these relatives and maybe other law offices and personal injury stuff that I'll go into later, that Charlie's still working on his financial stuff or personal injury stuff. All right, then the next category is finance. 95% of the financial calls were not picked up, and only 5% of any of the finance calls were picked up from Charlie's jail phone calls. And then Harvey, 6% of the time Harvey did not pick up the phone, and 96% of the time he picked up. Then Janice was 3% of the time she didn't pick up. That's a 97% rate of picking up. So that's pretty good. She's picking up most of the phone calls from Charlie, and a whopping 51% of the March phone calls were not answered. Charlie is getting straight up ghosted. And even though the lawyers had more calls than Donna, 40% of the time the lawyers did not pick up, which is pretty crazy. And to have your lawyer not pick up 40% of the time must be frustrating for Charlie. And one day he called his lawyers 8 times in a row with no success and no answers. And then Donna didn't pick up the phone 26% of the time of Charlie's calls from jail. And can you imagine if Charlie's wondering if she's been arrested? And then also another thing to note, Charlie called Donna 18 times in a row one day. I think it was on the 4th of March. And Charlie would call his mother and then his broker, and neither of them were picking up. So he must be freaking out over his finances or something. So he's having trouble reaching his broker. 95% of his financial calls to his investments and broker were not answered in a down market. He made many more financial calls this month, and he's not calling Janice as much. And 70% to the other category were not answered. Calls to Harvey were usually long, and they were maybe talking about market despair, my mother wanted to note. And then another number was to a personal injury lawyer. They didn't pick up twice, which was interesting. And another new number was to a person accused of stalking a woman, and they did not pick up 5 times that he called. And this could have been someone that Charlie was in jail with. And, you know, when you reverse Google numbers, people do tend to leave information about those phone numbers if they are a harassing person. So Charlie made a record number of new calls, never previously called, and only 3 of the 10 new numbers picked up after repeated attempts. He made 19 calls to track a package, but nobody picked up. Previously, those calls were completed, but not this month. Something important may be lost in transit that he's ordered, or something from his lawyer. So Charlie's going crazy on the phone over brokerage and financial calls. Most are ghosted because everyone is doing the same and nobody's answering him. So hardly any calls to Janice. My mom has a bunch more notes, and I guess we'll keep you guys updated as long as there is new information. So Charlie's calls to the financial, by far, financial and other phone calls were ghosting Charlie the most, along with this Florida man who is kind of a mystery man that Charlie calls, and some of his relatives and some of his brokers and financial stuff. Nobody wants to talk to Charlie. So Charlie was pretty unlucky in the month of March. I hope that this wasn't too confusing, the rates and percentages. I hope that it makes sense. Some of these are just rough estimates. I just wanted to give you guys an idea of how often Charlie was getting ghosted and the calls for the month of March. And more videos to come, you guys. Sorry, this is a very slow news cycle. I really have slowed down the rate of my videos, but I will get back to you guys soon. I hope you're having a wonderful spring. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that everyone is having a wonderful spring, and I'll probably do videos more sporadically now. There's just not a ton of news, and going into the fall, let's hope for justice for Dan and the Markel family, and I hope that everyone is having a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching and liking and subscribing.